Good evening. Egypt has staged a second wave of airstrikes against the Islamic State in Libya. It follows the first barrage overnight, which was launched after a video emerged showing the murder of 21 Coptic Christians.
There's been widespread disgust at the killings, with the US, the UN and the Pope today joining a global chorus of condemnation. Sky News will not show any of the graphic images from the beheading video, but a warning that the following report does contain a still image and audio of one of the militants speaking. Our Middle East correspondent Shireen Tadros is following the story from Cairo.
Families in pain, a community in shock. Brothers, fathers and sons were lost in the most cruel way. These are the families of the Christian men murdered by IS affiliates in Libya. They can't even bury their loved ones. They don't know if they will ever see their bodies. So all they can do is cry and pray. The Egyptian president promised to act decisively, and he did. Egyptian fighter jets struck their targets at dawn. This is the apparent aftermath of a series of raids on the city of Derna, eastern Libya, known to be a militant stronghold. The strikes were in coordination with the Tobruk-based eastern government, which say they also hit militant targets in the eastern and central part of the country. They happened soon after a propaganda video released by the militants Sunday night showed the beheading of the 21 Christian men on this beach. At one point, a militant gestures over the Mediterranean, threatening that IS will soon reach Europe.
Today, we're on the south of Rome, on the land of Islam, Libya, sending another message.
Egypt's Coptic Christians make up around 10% of the population and have been complaining for months that targeted killings in Libya have been ignored by the government. The video and resulting outrage is being used by the Egyptian government to officially get involved in Libya's war, backing the eastern government and renegade General Khalifa Haftar to push back Islamist militias that are now taking over large parts of the country. Egypt is also seeking international help to do this, calling for urgent meetings at the UN to take action in Libya. The message to the West is that the threat coming from Libya is an expansion of the IS franchise and a direct challenge to them.
Egypt has been calling for a few months to attract the attention of the international community about Libya, because we cannot fight the same enemy in one place and leave him to prosper on another place.
What started as retribution by Egypt for the killing of their citizens may end up once again dragging other countries into the Libyan conflict and having repercussions far beyond its borders. Shireen Tadros, Sky News, Cairo.
Well, with me now is Bishop Angaelos. He's the General Bishop of the Coptic Orthodox Church in the UK. Thank you for being with us. Widespread international condemnation of these murders from David Cameron, the Pope, the head of the UN and others. And very clear that as far as the killers are concerned, they did this because of the men's religion.
Well, absolutely. They had made allegations that these people were part of a Coptic crusade group, and that they were responsible for the forced conversion of Muslim women into Christianity, which of course neither of those is true. We've seen such restraint from the Christians of Egypt over centuries and over the last decades in particular. And what we find is rhetoric that then builds up and creates this narrative that is then believed.
But nonetheless, the action of the current Egyptian government in taking these military strikes makes it clear that they don't subscribe to this idea of there being some kind of crusade underway.
Well, it doesn't make sense that there would be. Within our history in Egypt, there has never been any kind of aggression shown by the Christians there. In actual fact, my concern, more than what's happening recently, is that there's a dehumanization of people, that these poor men were paraded on the beach almost as war trophies, and then they were dehumanized and depersonalized and shown off in this way. And I think when we do that, it's much easier to inflict this kind of brutality. But my call as a religious leader to other people who would consider themselves as religious is, let's look at the humanity of people and try to find that kind of solution. Because if some of these people are faithful in what they're doing and they really believe that this is their way of practicing their faith, then surely they must have an idea of sanctity of life. And that sanctity of life exists across all people.
I mean, the problem is that, as far as we can understand from the faith which the Islamic State profess, they don't see it that way, that basically either you join them or you are killed or enslaved.
Absolutely. There is a very narrowing perspective of who is accepted by IS at the moment. And I think it really is time for Islamic teachers to create a counter-narrative to that, and to demonstrate to people who may be taken in by this. We saw the glorification of these killings in these videos, which were very polished and very choreographed, that there is no glory in death, and that if the interpretation is proposed in this way, then surely there must be another one.
You talked about the difficulty of Egyptian Copts over the last decade or so. Is it not now the case, though, that the regimes, for example, we saw in Jordan last week and now in Egypt, are more open to a number of faiths within their countries than certainly the previous government in Egypt was?
Well, there has been a marked improvement in Egypt, and what we need to draw a distinction between the fact that these acts were actually carried out in Libya this time, not in Egypt, which is a very new factor.
The men
had
gone there to work. Yeah.
Absolutely, they'd gone there to work from underprivileged families, and just to send money back to their families, and they now have lost valued members.
How widespread is the Coptic faith in the Middle East?
Well, the Coptic Church was established in Egypt 2,000 years ago. It is the largest bulk of Christian presence in the Middle East, between 12 and 15 million, and 90% of Coptic Christians still live in Egypt. So when we don't consider ourselves a diaspora community, we're a community in expansion, but Christians have a heritage there and have a place there and consider themselves as indigenous people there.
Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.